Good evening, council and staff. May I have a mover and seconder to call the meeting to order, please? I have Councillors Garwood and Deputy Cabral. The special meeting of the Council of the Township of Springwater of October 16th, 2024 come to order at 4 p.m. All those in favor? And that has carried. Councillor, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest this evening? Not seeing any. May I have a mover and seconder to resolve into closed? Councillors Fisher and Moore, that in accordance with Section 239 of the Municipal Act 2001, the Corporation of the Township of Springwater does hereby resolve into closed session at 4:01 p.m. for discussion pertaining to labor relations and employee negotiations, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for the purpose, a trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, financial, or labor relation information supplied in confidence to the municipality or local board, which, if disclosed, could reasonably be expected to prejudice significantly the competitive position or interference significantly with the constructional or negotiations of person, group, or persons, or the organization. Our topics tonight are maintenance of the Old Second South and the results of the Integrity Commission on proposals. All those in favor? And that has carried. Council, at this time, we will continue the conversations from closed into open. We do have the maintenance for Old Second South. So the conversation, without pertaining to legal, anything further at this time, we can have conversation on that. And I do believe that Councillor Fisher had images to be presented to council.
Thing in a moment. I just first I threw you to CAO Schmidt. In November of 2023, it was described to us by Mr. Nicholson that a grader had gone off the road, and I'm reading here that we also had a near collision with a resident. You clarified with me via email that it was on November the 29th, to be specific. I think it was Manager Ha who did. Can you tell me why, for such an incident, and really it was well described by Mr. Nicholson, who I don't believe was there, why was that incident not documented?
CEO Schmidt, and as I do that, I'm just going to remind council if there's an identifiable individual, if we could use staff member in place of that, and if not, we can resolve back into closed. CEO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor Colgan. So through you to Councillor Fisher. Councillor Fisher, I believe the incident happened on, as you mentioned, towards the end of November. As a result of that, I believe Mr. Nicholson was called in to our consultant was called in to perform a risk assessment on the particular hill, and a report was provided to staff, and that was the report that was discussed earlier this evening. So there, in that report, it advises on the different particulars as to how to mitigate different risks as it relates to this matter.
Councillor Fisher.
So once again, I appreciate the report on it, but there should be an incident report. If somebody, a piece of equipment left the road, slipped off the road, and had a near collision with a resident, I would expect that we'd have some type of documentation pertaining to this. Also, I will say, you know, this was, I'll say it, I think this was used to govern council in making a decision in our last council meeting, and I actually have footage and pictures of that hill. At no point on the 29th or even the day prior on the 28th, when the grader was there, did it slip off the road. So I'm just wondering if the incident even happened, because we have no documentation of it, which we should. If some, and when I checked on the dates, I see no grader going off the road there. So can you elaborate on this and let me know exactly what's going on here?
CEO Schmidt.
Through you, Mayor Cogman, to Councillor Fisher. So I'll do my best, Councillor Fisher. My understanding was through discussions with staff and with our consultant that there was an incident whereby the grader did go off the road. As to the particulars, I'm not familiar with those particulars, and so I'd have to defer those to Manager Ha to provide further details as to what happened at that particular incident.
Manager Ha, I'm going to have Councillor Fisher repeat his question for you.
Through you to Manager Ha. Manager Ha, on the 29th of November, as was clarified via email, a grader slipped off the road, and now I'm reading that we had a near collision with a resident. Can you tell me, A, why was this not documented? And B, when I go through the footage, the pictures on that hill, because there are cameras up, many of them, why am I not finding a grader on the 28th or 29th going off the road? So no documentation of that incident and no images of that incident. Am I to believe that it didn't happen?
Manager Ha.
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, to Councillor Fisher. So yes, on November 29th, the grader was on the hill. Our GPS shows that. It was also the day that Craig did his did his assessment of the hill. He's the one who took the photos of where the grader actually slid into the berm that's along the side of the road. Didn't slide off the road, slid into the berm on the side of the road, but it is evidence that the grader did slide. And given that it was documented in Craig's assessment, we didn't do an internal reporting of that. The operator had let his supervisor know, but it was also documented within Craig's report.
Councillor Fisher and then Councillor Moore.
You can see where this is a bit disturbing for me, and I think it should be for all members of council. We sat through a meeting, closed session, so I won't elaborate on it too much, but an individual came in to tell us about this particular incident, and it was certainly far more severe than the one you just described to me. Far more. You know, I took notes on it. You know, we were hearing about power lines and going over an embankment. Now we're hearing that it slid, right? And really there was no incident report done. So when I hear this, I hear that either we're not doing our job with our employees in documenting, or we're allowing embellishments to happen to sway council. So the notes that I took in last council's meeting sounded very severe, like a major accident had happened. I'm also reading now that we nearly hit a resident. So, but then I'm hearing from you that it's really not that severe. It didn't really go off the road, not really down an embankment. And what about this resident? So, you know, are we misleading council, or are we not doing our job, or a combination of both?
Councillor Moore. Councillor Thompson.
They won't answer.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So the question posed to us then for Old Second South is consideration because it's a Class 6 road. So I'm going to ask CEO Schmidt, please, to explain what that means now that we're in open. And then secondly, the proposal for a 4x4 truck to be used with a plow. And, you know, should we walk that path, what that would look like, and maybe Manager Hogg could speak to what measures we would be putting in place if we were to go down that road. Thank you.
CEO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor Colgan, through you, Councillor Moore. So I'll do my best, Councillor Moore, to explain the road classification. So the information that I shared with you, I believe Mr. Hogg did provide it to me. I believe it's through OREG 239, and it speaks to kind of the minimum maintenance piece. And so every road within a municipality has a classification. Essentially, I believe classifications go from level 1 to 6 and are basically focused on or determined based on traffic volume and speed. And so my understanding is this particular road has very limited traffic volume, which and speed is, I don't know the actual speed off the top of my head. I think it's maybe 50 or 60 kilometers. I'm not quite sure. So based on those two parameters, it would fall under a Class 6 status. Even with that, if the speed was to be 80 kilometers an hour, which I believe is the highest rate of speed within the township, it would still fall under a Class 6 road criteria, just because the volume of traffic, or the limited volume that's on this particular road. So again, I believe that's through OREG 239, which dictates the different classifications of roads. And then further to that, my understanding is that depending on the classification of road, the minimum maintenance standards dictates when maintenance from a winter perspective, when a winter event happens, when the municipality is required to clear snow and or ice. And there's different parameters, and I won't be able to tell you what those are off the top of my head, but I'd maybe speak to Mr. Haw to have that. My understanding, those is Class 6 roads do not have any prescribed maintenance within the legislation. So, you know, as it relates to this particular section, if council was to choose to walk the path of continuing maintenance, I think there needs to be a conversation about what the expectation of the frequency of maintenance would be on this hill, because we do have a number of other class 3, class 4, class 4 roads, 5 roads, which obviously have prescribed maintenance within the legislation. This one does not. And so, there needs to be a clear expectation that, if there is a certain event, that this is not going to be the first road that actually is looked after. It's going to be likely a road that's looked after later on, subject to council direction. If council chooses to provide direction to staff to say that this road receives a higher priority, then we'll take that direction. But based on the legislation, my understanding is that's how we are required to respond to weather events, and need to respond at a certain time frame, whether it's ice or whether it's snow, depending on the road classification. Hopefully I explained that as best I could. I'll leave it at that.
Councillor Moore?
Thank you. So I'll also wait for Manager Hawes' response, but I'm wondering if you could look up for me what the classification road number would be allocated to Baldwick Lane, because that is a dead-end road, not far, and I'd like to know, because it literally has no traffic volume at all. Thank you.
And Councillor Moore, you had a second part to your question to be directed to Manager Haw. Manager Haw?
Yep, through yourself, Mayor Coughlin, to Councillor Moore. So yes, CIO Schmidt was correct. The information came out of the minimum maintenance standards, and and he is correct that it's traffic volume and or speed that would dictate the classification. And so Baldwick Lane, I'll jump to that one because it's in my mind, would be a class 6 road, based on the minimum maintenance standards, traffic volume, and sorry, could I get you to repeat what your question was for me from?
Thank you. I was asking about the use of a truck, a 4x4 truck with the plow in front, and were we to put safety measures in place, if you could speak to what those safety measures would be. And I'd also like to know if you feel that it is reasonable.
Manager Haw?
Yep, thank you. Mayor Coughlin, through you to Councillor Moore. So the recommendations from the consultant were that that we not use the grader to do the work, that we use a 4x4 truck, that we establish a means to alert residents to winter operations, to be alert that equipment would be on the hill. So whether that would be email, text, phone, etc. That we complete this work as a 2-person assignment with the following parameters. That we develop an SOP to protect the workers, that we establish a regularly scheduled time for winter maintenance, that we notify residents by mail or email at the beginning of the winter season that to expect a 1-hour disruption periodically while we provide the maintenance, that the operator of the 4x4 be well rested, that a traffic control person with two-way communication to the operator advising of residential traffic approaching the hill, and install signage at the top of the hill notifying that winter operations are in effect. So those would be the parameters that we would need to meet based on the assessment to be able to provide maintenance on the hill. Some of these I see as not being difficult to achieve, notifying the residents, those sort of things. Working it into our schedule and providing staff to be able to do it in at the same time as other roads in the area may prove difficult, given staffing levels, given that all of my staff currently operate, have existing plow routes, so being able to have 2 people there at the same time could prove a challenge, but we'll seek direction from council on what direction to move forward.
Supplementary, and then I do have Councillors Thompson, Fisher, and Deputy Cabral.
Thank you. I would like to circle back to Baldwick Lane for 1 second. Is Baldwick Lane then part of your regular snow removal route?
Manager Ha?
Yep, through you, Mayor Coughlin, to Councillor Moore. Yes, Baldwick Lane would be on a regular route done with a tandem snowplow.
Thank you. And I'm assuming Baldwick Lane, is there any other routes throughout the municipality that are class 6 or 5 or 4 that don't form part of our regular maintenance? Is there a reason why Baldwick Lane as a class 6 would receive a higher level service than this road?
Through to you, Mayor Coughlin. Baldwick Lane receives maintenance as part of a regular route, similar to a lot of other class 6 roads that the township would have. Likely basically because the ease of being able to do them with our existing equipment.
And thank you for that, Manager Ha. I'm just looking for, you say with our existing equipment, so a snowplow is easily able to go down that road, turn around and come back, much like Floss Road 5 as a dead end, those types of roads. So there's no terrain, I'm just curious as to why we would provide service on one class 6 road, but not another.
Yeah, just essentially the ability to do it. Obviously, given that they're a class 6 road, if we were in a major event, some of those roads would potentially be neglected until such time we caught up on higher class roads that have higher traffic volumes, and then we would get there. Given that we don't have a minimum standard to meet under the minimum maintenance standards, but as long as we were able to plow it, we would plow it.
Thank you for that. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, Mayor. It's interesting to me that our GPS shows that the grader was there and that the owner's camera says the grader wasn't there, sounding a little bit like a spy versus spy novel to me. I see no reason why staff would fabricate information or evidence on this. I left the last meeting with a very different impression. I didn't feel that there was a significant event, although it was clear to me the grader did slid, and it didn't slip over an embankment other than going down the hill that it was trying to clean. It was trying that our health and safety committee, their purpose was trying to prevent a significant event happening. And so that's the impression that I had. And so I'd like just leave it at that. I supported what the health and safety committee presented to us, and I think it's the right way to go and protect our workers.
I have Councillor Fisher, Deputy Cabral, and Councillor Garwood. And
Thank you. I think, Councillor Thompson, you also made a suggestion to gate up the road in the last meeting, so for all residents. So anyway, that was one observation I made. When I look at the suggestions that were made by Hicks, by the law firm, it sounds a lot like the original
Councillor
motion.
Fisher, I'm just going to remind you that there was proprietary information provided to council that was part of a closed session meeting, so providing that in an open session would not
Did I do that?
be permissible. I was just trying to catch you as you were, I just wanted,
Oh, yeah.
thank you.
I don't think I was in that direction, but thank you. Anyway, suggestions about maintenance it sound a lot like my original motion, which was presented and voted on by council for winter maintenance on Old Second. So to me, if we had only executed our original motion, we would have been halfway there already. Also, did we not hire 2 drivers last year? So we're saying we're understaffed. But did we not hire 2 drivers last year? And I was under the impression that that would actually fill in the gap and allow us to to better service all of the community, all of Springwater. Can you answer that, Mr. Haw?
Manager Haw, and then maybe I'll turn to CO Schmidt for recent hires last year.
Yep, thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through you to Councillor Fisher. So yes, we did hire 2 equipment operators last year. Those operators were hired to fill the vacant positions that were created with the creation of the union. Our 4 persons used to operate equipment and had existing plow routes. With the union coming in, those positions are management and therefore don't operate equipment. So we hired 2 positions 2 operators to fulfill those existing positions.
Thank you for that. And prior to those 2 positions, are you able to speak to when the last time we expanded the public works component for plow operators? And the reason I'm thinking of this, I'm not just speaking specifically to Old Second and whether hiring 2 people would alleviate or allow us to do that. We've also brought on many new subdivisions in the last 3 years and many more kilometers of roads and sidewalks that need to be plowed. So in the last, I do believe that in that presentation, the composition of our public works department, and that specifically was 10 for many years. Could you speak to how many we've brought in? And I don't want in comparison to kilometers, but the suggestion that bringing on 2 new plow operators would alleviate the time to have 2 assigned staff members to do this road. I'm just curious as to that.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. In my time with the municipality, we have added 1 member through growth to the township to cover off new developments per se, but that's, other than that, it's been the same complement since 2008, I believe.
Thank you for that. Follow on, Councillor Fisher.
I did want to show those images. I think if we could have those up, but I understand we sent out, or we got quotes for 8 different plow companies, and only 1 apparently responded, to the tune of, I believe it was $975. We were also told there was a $3,000 per plow verbal. I don't think that should have been expressed to us because I think it sways council in their decision making. One thing I did want to point out, I did take the liberty of phoning that plow company. We can actually get it for less than $500 a plow. So there is a fully insured company out there that is willing to do it for $575 per plow. So a far cry from the $3,000 that we were told about. So I think that should be on council's mind as well, that it's actually fairly cost effective to do that and have another company do it. So.
And at this time, you're
Yes,
asking for
please.
your pictures. Thank you.
So here we can see a grader that can easily turn around at the bottom of the hill. It can do a 3-point turn very easily, even given its size. If we can scroll down. You can see there, they're using the blade. I'm not sure if that's the snow blade that we were told about, but keep scrolling, please. Please stop right there. This is on the 29th, when we were told that it did go off the road. Once again, went through all of the pictures. I did not see it. I did see it on the 28th, but not on the 29th. I noticed staff members are there, probably taking the pictures that were presented to us, but certainly not going off the road. If you could keep scrolling, please. We also see here that hydro trucks do go down there. So you can see the road is not very well maintained, but they are down there side by side. So it is a wide road. Please keep scrolling. Purelator, large trucks, and you can see how wide the road actually is, despite what the consultant said last time. And we can see here, this is prior to the road being cleared. We keep scrolling, we can see quite a bit of traffic in that area, again, despite what we've been told. There is the grader, and if we can stop right there, I believe this is the area where we were told that it slid off the road. If you look at the trees there, there'll be evidence of it sliding off the road. So it, once again, never happened. This is the 28th. I think that concludes everything I wanted to show. Perfect. That's good.
Anything further?
No, I think the pictures say what needs to be said, but I will say that the Mr. Nicholson, who came in last time, painted a very different picture from what I hope council can see.
Thank you. And before I do go to Deputy Cabral, Councillor Garwood, Councillor Alexander, and Councillor Thompson, I have CAO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor Coggan. Through you to members of council, I just wanted to make a comment here regarding a comment that was made by a member of council as it relates to procurement. I think it's very inappropriate for a member of council, a individual member of council, to try to acquire or procure goods and services on behalf of the township. Council as a whole has that authority under the procurement bylaw and is being directed to staff. To have a member of council do that, I believe is inappropriate.
Thank you for that, and I will turn to Deputy Cabral.
Thank you. I don't know if it was pure procurement, but it certainly was an eye-opener as far as cost was concerned. So anyway, I just want to comment quickly. I'm not going to take a long time. Nobody's expectations are that we're going to race over there and plow the road. That's not my expectation at all. It's a Class 6 road, but I also hazard to say that all of our subdivisions, they're not much higher than it. I think they're Class 5, if I'm not mistaken. And our roads that we would consider to be the arteries, let's say, or collectors, I believe, and Manager Hawk could correct me, I believe that I think they're maybe at best a 3. And that's besides the point. So those roads are going to get the priority service. And I know on a regular snowfall, everybody goes out, they do their thing, they get done, not bad. Serious snowfall, it's a different story. You have to prioritize. You have to utilize your resources, both physical and equipment-wise, in the best fashion you can. And there's also constraints on our drivers regarding the amount of hours that they can actually work. So I think the key here is that, are we in a position to provide some level of snow removal and winter maintenance on that stretch of roadway? I would suggest to you that we are, based on the report that we got today, be it a contractor or be it township ourselves. When I think about some of the areas that I am familiar with that we do plow, and some of them are off of County Road 92, and we've talked about them before. These are tiny stretches from here to that exit sign that basically serve as a driveway for the adjacent houses, but they are road allowances. We are maintaining them in the wintertime. The other point I just wanted to make is, when it comes to policy and procedure for the municipality, the expectation that I would have is that it is followed completely and to a T. So to my way of thinking, to suggest that a consultant's report satisfied the obligation of staff to undertake to create an incident report for a vehicle that went off the roadway, which is what normally would have been done, it is not an appropriate means to quantify what happened, and also keep it on file as such, because if anybody wanted to look back on who was driving that grader, when it happened, where it happened, they're not going to find it where they're going to be looking. They're going to have to look for a consultant's report that's going to be filed away likely somewhere else. So I do find, that I find a little bit disappointing. And I would suggest that in future, it would be nice that if these things happen, that they're properly documented and properly filed in the same way that we have done it for everybody else. So those were the only points I'd like to make. Thank you.
Counselor Garwood?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I believe there's a way to have a constructive conversation without throwing accusations at our staff. We've spoken about this matter at length in multiple meetings now. We've had a consultant's report. We've had 2 legal opinions. We've had a recommendation from our Joint Health and Safety Committee and multiple hours of staff resources associated to this matter. By no extent have I ever felt that staff or any reports misled any member of council sitting up here. We can have the conversation without throwing an accusation. I personally visited the Hill, and this was weeks ago after our last conversation, and beautiful summer fall day in my SUV, and I sat on the hill and I took some photos myself so I could reference back to it. And when I was standing there, it is a significant incline or decline, depending upon which way you're looking. When I got home and I looked at the photos, well, the photos don't look too bad. It's no different than looking at something online and saying, oh, that doesn't look too scary, and then going and doing it yourself. So it's easy for us to sit here in our suits and say it's safe to go and do something. We've had various opinions, and I'm not going to speak about the legal opinions because we're in open now. I shared my opinion on this at the last meeting, in both closed and in open, in regards to the fact that if I'm not going to go do the work, then I'm not going to support sending our staff to go down and do that work. That's not leadership, in my opinion. I will re-ask a question that I asked previously, so the public is also aware of the same question. Just through the clerk, is the chief still on the line? Great. So through the mayor to Chief Kirk, can you please speak from an emergency services perspective to the history of this area, fires in the past, access to get down into that area when the road was not cleared? Because again, remember, we are actually talking about an enhancement of service here. This was not plowed consistently, I believe that was the word utilized, previously to last year. So can you speak to your experience, Chief, from a fire perspective of getting down to the area and the vehicles that we have that could support these residents if the road was not cleared and a fire did occur?
Chief Kirk?
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, to Councillor Garwood, I can speak of one specific incident that I am aware of since my tenure as the fire chief. April 10th, 2022, we did have a structure fire down there. It was a relatively warm spring day, so there was very little snow that I recall. The challenge that we had was once down at the bottom of Little Lake Lane, it is quite congested to be able to set up tanker shuttle operations. So we need porta tanks, we need a pumper, we need tankers going back and forth. So it is quite tight down there. In regards to your second question, obviously weather conditions will dictate if we can safely get a truck down there. And it's also going to likely be a lot more congested if we have snowbanks down at the bottom of Little Lake Lane. However, we would do our best to access those properties. We do have alternative measures in place. We do have UTVs and 4x4 pickups that we could potentially use portable pumps if necessary, if we could not get our equipment down in a safe manner. So hopefully that answers your question, Councillor.
Follow on, Councillor Garwood?
Thank you, Chief Kirk. That does, from an emergency services perspective, I appreciate that. So just stemming from that, and this is not a question, it's more of a statement. It's still, to me, even if this council decides to service the road moving forward on a more consistent basis and it becomes a part of staff's schedule, we could still run into the same issues down the road where there is a significant storm, staff are unable to clear the road, even if there's direction from council, staff can't make the machine fly. And from there is still not access for the residents, not access or significant or substantial access for emergency services. So we can sit here and say we're going to clean the road, but the reality is we got a hard winter, not like last year, but previous years, then we might run into some problems here. So I understand that there are residents down that area who have lived there for many years. Some are newer than others, and many have made do with the situation. They have and were aware of the circumstances when they purchased homes, when they moved there, understanding that for many years, up until recently, we did not consistently maintain this space. So again, I sit here and say, if I'm not going to go do it, and I wouldn't want myself to do it, I wouldn't want our staff to do it, why should we sit here and force them to do so? So again, I will not support maintaining this road any more than we have prior to last year. We haven't done so for the 30, 40, 50 years. I'm not quite sure why we are starting now.
Thank you. And before I do move on to Councillors Alexander, Thompson, Deputy Cabral, and Fisher, I'm just going to ask the clerk to pull up for me a section of our Code of Conduct. And I will remind members of council that no member shall maliciously or falsely impugn the professional or ethical reputation of any staff. So before we carry on this evening with allegations or accusations that there was a misinterpretation, it is actually in contradiction of our Code of Conduct. And anything moving forward, as chair, I will be pulling point of order on that. Councillor Alexander.
Okay, so I'm going to start with, I would like if we could keep the discussion today on what we've been shown today. I missed the last meeting, but I feel like we keep circling back and not really talking about the information that was presented to us today. I have a big issue with the historical part of it. If we haven't done it before, why are we doing it now? I'm not sure why we're paving any gravel roads then. If people moved on to a gravel road, so be it. Like, we move ahead with the time, so I don't really understand that piece. What stood out for me from the information provided today was the need, we are required to be accessible for fire and emergency services. That's an important piece. There are taxpayers that live on that road. They deserve to the fire to be able to get to them in a reasonable manner. And I think we also need to be aware of the safety of our fire team, the workers. If the road's not plowed, if it's more difficult for them to get there, we're putting them at risk as well. So you got to look at staff as a whole. With respect to the minimum maintenance, from my recollection, every time we've sat at this table and talked about the minimum maintenance required, it is our goal to do more than the minimum. Understanding that obviously in certain circumstances, that's all we can do is meet the minimum, but the goal should always be to do more. Again, these people pay taxes, they live on a class 6 road. We've just heard that we maintain, plow many different class 6 roads, so I don't understand why they're different. And again, the thing that probably stood out for me most is it came back, and please stop me if I'm not allowed to say this, but I think I'm okay, as medium to low risk with measures put in place. The measures that they're asking are pretty standard. Again, if it's something that we can't do with our current staffing complement, then we move and we go third-party consultant, because the people that live on that road deserve the same level of service as the rest of the taxpayers in Springwater.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for those comments. And I don't know why the government chose the wording minimum maintenance. It's the requirement. It's what we're required to do. So the minimum maintenance required on all class 6 roads, to my understanding, across the township is sporadic at best. So it's not that we're providing less service to the individuals on Old Second, it's that we're providing equitable service to those on Class 6 roads. I think that the suggestion of providing fire suppression services to suggest that we're not providing adequate fire suppression services would also suggest that we haven't been doing so for 30 years. And that is not something I think as a board of directors or as a council we want to suggest to the public that we're doing. I would ask now that Chief Kirk, if you are still on the line, thank you very much. So understanding that in the Township of Springwater, we don't have water access properties, but we do have access properties that are on roads that are not maintained in the winter months. What precautions or liability do we have? I mean, if somebody purchases a property at the end of a road that is not maintained in the winter, clearly if there's a storm and a subsequent tree down and a fire, our fire trucks wouldn't be able to get there. And I do agree with Councillor Alexander that we need to treat our staff as a whole. So we're not going to push a plow truck driver down that road just so a fire truck could get down it. But again, providing a equitable service across the township, understanding that we do not need to provide suppression services, but rather prevention services. Could you please elaborate on whether the homes at the bottom of Old Second are receiving an adequate level of service in comparison to other members or residents within Springwater Township?
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, to the rest of council, that's a difficult question to answer. Obviously, as I stated earlier, weather conditions, the road conditions would dictate that, and I guess you could apply that to any roadway in Springwater. I know our team. We would do our very best to get to the incident, whether it be with our fire trucks or our UTVs, our 4x4 pickups, to try to mitigate the incident. That said, I need council to be aware that the FPPA does state that we need to provide public education in regard to fire safety. We have to have certain components of the fire prevention program. So that would be smoke alarms, inspections on request or complaint. There is no requirement for a municipality to provide fire suppression services. However, if you choose not to do that, then you would have to contract that service out to another municipality via a fire service agreement. So we in turn provide a fire department. So in turn, the obligation is for us to provide the citizens of Springwater, no matter where they live, with adequate fire protection services. So hopefully that answers your question, Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you for that. Before I do go to Councillor Thompson, the point was raised at, and I guess I'll just rely on I hope I echo this correctly, with Councillor Alexander saying, then why would we convert any gravel roads? And I would agree that when a municipality has a plan, when a plan comes forward, whether it's a road needs study or a level of service, and if that plan is done so in the best interest of the township as a whole, it's one thing. But there's a secondary issue, and when individual residents come forward and ask for their road to be converted from gravel to hardtop, which is not consistent with our plan, and when individual residents who live on a Class 6 road come forward asking for an increased level of service that has not been identified by the municipality. Before I do go to Councillor Thompson, I see this as resident has purchased a home at the bottom of a hill, 5 houses that have been receiving a similar, if not adequate level of service from this municipality since inception for the last 30 years. The only thing that has changed is the expectation of the resident, not the level of service that has been provided by the township. I understand that this resident or these residents want an increased level of service, I believe it's our job now to assess the costs associated with that, and also assess the costs associated with increasing the level of service across the entirety of the municipality, not to just Class 6 roads. If we're going to increase Class 6, then why not 4, 3, 2, and 1? I think that this for me, and this is going to sound horrible, this is much like moving beside a chicken barn and complaining about the smell. You live on a road that does not have winter maintenance. And you're asking this township to now perform winter maintenance. We have had many experts and committees come forward to tell us that this is not in our best interests. And we continue to have the conversation as to how can we do this. For me, maintaining the level of service that has been provided over years, Councillor Alexander, I do have you. I'm in full support of maintaining the level of service that we have. Councillor Thompson. Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. We're talking about more service. What we're hearing from staff is they're not going to do it anymore. So there is no service, is what we're being told. They want to cease doing any snow maintenance there at all. That is what brought us here before, is that they said, put a sign up at top, no winter maintenance, and let's not do it anymore. So it's not increasing anything. To my way of thinking, these folks are just asking for some plowing. I'd also like to point out too that, and certainly without detracting from what Chief Kirk has said, structure fires don't always happen in April. They can happen any time of the year. I would also like to point out that I don't believe and I will ask Chief Kirk through Mayor Coughlin. Chief Kirk, if you're still there, would you be able to provide comment on accessibility during the winter months, during snow, if it were not plowed, how it would affect paramedic vehicles and police vehicles?
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, to Deputy Mayor Cabral. Can you pose the question again? I'm having computer issues here, so
Well,
I've lost my video and I got part of your question.
Thank you, Chief Kirk. To be quite honest, I didn't think you would be able to really provide comment on it because your familiarity is with our own service and our own equipment. My question was, would you be able to provide comment on difficulties or issues that paramedics and police vehicles may have accessing during the wintertime if the road was not maintained or plowed?
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, to Deputy Mayor Cabral. I did took the liberty to speak with management at Paramedic Services, and they were in the same boat as what I alluded to. They would do their very best to access properties, given the conditions they were served with. They do also have a UTV similar to what the Springwater Fire and Emergency Services has to be able to access those properties. As for the police, I can't speak for the police because I didn't have that dialogue with the OPP.
Follow on, Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Just with respect to the UTV, I think the paramedics, they would likely have to call the UTV after they'd arrived on scene and found out that the road was not in an accessible state for their vehicle. I don't think that's the situation that I would want anybody to be found in. I'd also like to point out that I drive Airport Road quite frequently. I would suspect it's a fairly high class of road with regular maintenance. And I just want to point out that some of the numbers, I think we were told 5% grade for the county and 6% grade for the township, and this was a little bit more than that. They have grade on Airport Road at 10%, and they managed to plow that without too much difficulty. I'm sure that they must have done some kind of risk assessment there too. And I think that's the part that I'm going to focus on, is that we've had someone here who said, manage the risk and you'll be able to do it. So It's not to provide an increased level per se, but what we have right now is a situation where we're not going to be providing any. So I can't support not providing any service at all.
Counselor Fisher?
Just want to go back to something that was said not long ago, that we've had evidence showing that it speaks to why we shouldn't be doing this. I disagree. I actually think we went up for a legal opinion, and it does speak to the fact that we should be doing this. It even outlines ways to do it correctly. So I think the path has been made very clear for us. I also will say this, from my perspective, I believe the last meeting, I believe that, I'll call them falsehoods, we weren't fed the correct information. And for me, questioning...
Counselor Fisher, as I stated earlier, in accordance with our procedural
Absolutely,
bylaw,
yeah.
providing accusations like that is not appropriate at this table.
What I'd like to say is questioning staff is not accusing staff. We are a board of directors, as you said earlier on tonight. And I think that that we do need to hold them to account, particularly when it comes to things like I mentioned previously. So I'm sorry if some people took it that way, but it is our job to question certain things, Mayor.
I next have Counselor Alexander.
I'll be quick because Councillor Fisher actually just covered it with respect to the comment that we've had experts that said this is not in our best interest. Again, I wasn't at the last meeting. Tonight, I read 2 different legal opinions that pretty much said it was in our best interest with mitigations, and I don't think anybody at this table is disputing that we move forward without providing the mitigations that were given to us. So I do think, the path, as Councillor Fisher did say, has been laid out for us in a way to safely do this with our staff, or if we cannot do it with our staff, with a third party.
Thank you. And I'll just turn for clarification. So for many years, there has been a sign at the top of the hill. Years ago, there was a bucket of sand at the top of the hill. And I get that expectations change and levels of service will change. So the question before council tonight, is it to do nothing, or is it to maintain the level of service that has been provided, or increase the level of service? I'm just would like clarification for the public, please.
Thank you, Mayor Colgan. Based on my understanding of the Joint Health and Safety Committee recommendation, it's to cease all maintenance. So in my opinion, that would be potentially a reduction in service.
And thank you. And then the recommendation from this council, is it to move the level of service maintaining in the regular off-season and winter season, or both? Understanding that regular maintenance had been provided on the hill during just regular grading, but there was never regular winter maintenance in accordance with, it wasn't plowed every day by 7 a.m. So is the expectation now to move to that level of service, or is this to just revert to the existing level of service prior to the Joint Health and Safety Committee's recommendation?
Thank you, Mayor Colgan. Through you, I'll answer it this way. We're in council's hands as to how you wish to proceed with this. At the end of the day, if council chooses to proceed with what was suggested this evening with those mitigation factors in place, we could perform maintenance as noted. That being said, I think there is that understanding that the frequency of maintenance needs to be clear, that it's not going to be at a drop of a hat. It is something that essentially staff will adhere to and be reasonable in what the expectation is to ensure that that roadway is maintained as best as possible based on a Class 6 classification.
In accordance with the minimum maintenance standards. Thank you for that. Councillor, I had Alexander Moore, and then...
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. The issue that I'm having is that council's direction last winter was to use the 4x4 truck with the plow and see how the winter went, but that didn't happen. So now we're in a position where we've been advised that the use of a 4x4 truck with a plow, and this is our legal opinion, is that It is a medium to
again-
low risk with mitigation measures in place. And Manager Ha reiterated what those mitigation measures would be. And so I think it is fair to move ahead with this 4x4 and a plow at a reasonable standard. It doesn't have to be every day. It doesn't have to be every month. You know, we're reasonable people. So let's use our judgment, and we can allow staff to use their best judgment too. But I like that we look at all staff, for instance, all our EMS personnel plus our regular staff. And of course, safety is paramount in everything we do. Risk assessment is something we do every single day. And in my job, if I need 2 nurses to go somewhere to do something, I send 2 nurses, I don't send 1. And in this case, we send 2 staff instead of 1, because that's the safest thing to do. And safety being paramount, I think that the measures outlined are very reasonable. So I will support this. Can we revisit it in the spring? I think that's appropriate too.
Thank you, and I will echo on Councillor Moore's weekly or monthly. I think that the concern I have is that the intention or expectation of the residents is that this is done daily, and that's just strictly from the residents that I've spoken to at the Hill. So it's the level of service. I have no problem supporting the maintenance as was done in years prior. But to increase this to something that we clear every day by 7 a.m., it doesn't seem to be, it's a Class 6 road, it's not a priority at this time. Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I would like to see this actually form part of somebody's route. We have 4x4 plow trucks there that are doing parking lots, and it should be part of, Baldwick Lane is part of a route. Even 92 there, those ones, they're part of a route. Some of the other roads that I would consider off of the 4th there, I don't know what the name of it is. I think it's a stretch of the baseline. It doesn't really go anywhere, but I think it's part of a route. So I would just like to see it maybe be part of a route, because the way it works is if it's a significant snowfall, everybody's got to wait. And the people who are at the bottom of the priority list, which would be this stretch of road, will have to wait a little bit longer. It's kind of like clean up our concessions, clean up the larger main arterial roads, and then step into the subdivisions and clean them up. And really, we're beating around the bush here, and just if we can do it, let's try and give these folks an opportunity to get some maintenance done there in the wintertime. And I think, I'm not going to say once a month, or I'm going to say when there's a significant snowfall and we're doing parking lots, maybe someone might have an opportunity the next day to go over and plow the old 2nd.
Councillor Fisher?
So to the Deputy Mayor's point, that was the original discussion when the motion came forward, that the 4x4 trucks would be utilized, and it was described to me at the time that it would likely be after parking lots were cleared with 4x4 trucks. That's when they would be being used, and it would be advantageous to use it then. In addition to that, I think the people at the end of Old 2nd have very real expectations. If there's a major snowfall, they may not be first. I had a phone call from a resident down there last winter when we weren't doing it, asking me to plow it. Well, my response was, I don't even have my road plowed yet, right? And I'm in a subdivision. So I think they have very real expectations, and I think we could work with them on it. But they also had expectations when we brought this forward and voted on it, and then we didn't do it. So we could have been doing this, and we could have had the 4x4 trucks already running out there. But I agree with the Deputy Mayor. If we had this as part of a dedicated route, then I'm sure it would satisfy those residents. And there's multiple residents down there. And like all of Springwater, it's growing.
At this time, I will turn to the clerk, who has been diligently trying to make a recommendation for us, so I will turn to Deputy Clerk Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So just based on discussions, I've drafted a motion, and I'll just read what I have. The council hereby directs staff to proceed with winter maintenance on Old Second South beyond Sutton Heights using a 4x4 pickup truck as outlined in the consultant's report as follows. And then we're highlighting what Manager Ha had indicated as safety measures to mitigate risk. So number one, remove the no maintenance sign if the road will be maintained, even minimally each season. Number two, remove the grader as an option for completing the work. Number three, establish a means to alert residents to winter operations and to be alert for heavy equipment following a snowfall and when entering or leaving their homes. 4, complete service as a 2-person assignment with the following parameters: developing an SOP to protect the workers, establish a regularly scheduled time for winter service, notify residents by mail or email of the beginning of the winter operations season and to expect disruptions for 1 hour, that operators of the 4x4 be well rested, a traffic control person be assigned with 2-way communication to the operator advising of residential traffic approaching the crest of the hill, and install signage at the crest of the hill notifying that winter operations are in effect, and complete plowing in a downward direction only from the top of the hill when the road is closed off, and that a written response be provided to our joint health and safety committee.
Councillor Thompson and Deputy Cabral.
Through the mayor to CEO Schmidt, I don't know if you can answer this question. So would it be more cost effective to have the contractor do it at $575 or having our staff go through all that?
CEO Schmidt.
Through you, Mayor Colgan, to Councillor Thompson. My preference would be to have a third party do it.
Councillor Thompson.
So I could support this if we did have a third party do this and cap it at $600 per plow as the quote that we've got from Councillor Fisher.
I think that we would have to go to tender for that, and I'm going to ask Councillor Thompson that we remain decorum at the table, as I've stated. I do agree that there were some numbers thrown around here, but I would also like to point out that sometimes, and I'm not accusing any private proprietors for this, but anytime there seems to be a bid on a municipal job, sometimes the price tag is increased a little bit. So if it's the discretion of council that we go out to tender prior to the winter maintenance season to inquire as to what the cost of the municipality on this would be, we could also include that in the motion so that we do have proper quotes provided to us. So if you could include that, thank you. Deputy Cabral, I know you get to sit beside me and you're close enough to tap me. However, I do try and keep everybody in line here. So I did have Councillor Fisher and then to Deputy Cabral.
No, I think you went to me before, so.
Deputy Cabral.
I want to thank Councillor Thompson because I wanted to include there an opportunity for staff actually to look at a contract piece as well. I don't know whether or not, I don't know whether or not, I'd have to figure out, the average snowfall, whether or not that would fall into the purview of staff being able to put something out on their own without coming back to council. But I would like to see an opportunity. But having said that, my understanding too is if we put out an RFP, we're obliged to take it. If that's not what I heard correctly, I just don't want to lock ourselves into that either. I wonder if there's an opportunity just to reach out and get some numbers.
CEO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor Colgan. So to the Deputy Mayor's comment, if I would suggest that staff be directed to seek quotes as opposed to go through a formal procurement process.
Thank you for that.
Just a question. So then, would it then come back to us and we would have the choice of moving forward with staff or going with, okay, excellent.
And CEO Schmidt, I'm just going to turn to you for concurrence on that.
Through you, Mayor Coughlin. I believe if the direction tonight is that we're going to perform this maintenance and it's going to be through a third party, then that information needs to be shared with our Joint Health and Safety Committee to ensure that we respond in a timely fashion to them. Obviously, we're beyond the 21 days that they respected that, but we do owe them a response. And I think it would be appropriate for staff to come back with that information so council's fully aware of what the cost will be.
And thank you for that. So just for clarification, the communication that will go to the Joint Health and Safety Committee is that the council is choosing to do 1, 2, 3, 4, not everything that we put in there as ourselves, but that we've requested information to see what it would cost us to go out to a third party, so that can come back to council at a subsequent meeting so that we can decide whether it's something we want to perform internally or something that we would like to have done externally. So the decision of council tonight, from what I'm hearing at this table, is that at this point the temperature is that the work will commence. CEO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I would just clarify that I believe, my opinion is direction needs to be provided tonight as to are township staff doing this or are they not doing this?
That is correct. And in Deputy Clerk Marshall's response, it did say that, I'm going to turn to Deputy Clerk Marshall to read the first part again.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So right now, no motion has been tabled. So if what CAO Schmidt is saying is if he wants staff to proceed with seeking the quotes and then reporting back and letting the Joint Health and Safety Committee knowing that. I'm just thinking
I'm going to provide clarification. From what I'm hearing from this table is that the majority of council is looking to move forward in the fashion whereby, if I can read this again, that council hereby directs staff to proceed with the winter maintenance on Old 2nd South. So we direct staff beyond Sutton Heights with a 4x4 truck as outlined in the consultant's report as followed. Then there were 4 separate safety precautions that were put in place that have been reiterated tonight, and that complete plowing in a downward direction was the 5th, and that council hereby directs staff to proceed with seeking quotes for an independent third-party contractor to complete the work. So that we are moving forward with staff doing it at this time, but we would like information as to, so that we are providing communication to the Joint Health and Safety Committee. Council is directing staff to do the work. However, we would like information as to what it would cost us to outsource this. Understanding we need to respond to the Joint Health and Safety Committee. We're providing a response this evening. I will turn to CEO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So based on that, so staff are going to be investing time and effort to develop an SOP to determine how to mitigate the measures. So we're going to spend staff time and effort to do that, which is going to come at a cost to the township. And so my suggestion is that if council wants this done, my preference would be to have a third-party contractor do it. And if it's a reasonable cost that we can obtain, that's the direction we should be moving in. That's my opinion. My issue here is that you're basically telling staff that they're doing it until otherwise advised. That's the direction you're telling us.
And it's not that I don't share similar concerns. That is what I've been hearing from the table this evening. So I just wanted to put a motion forward that was cohesive to our council. So I had Councillor Alexander and then Moore and Fisher.
So I would assume, and I get there's specific recommendations, safety recommendations with respect to Old 2nd, but in general, I would hope that we have an SOP regarding safety for all of our plow drivers regardless. So I would hope that this wouldn't be a huge undertaking. It would just be adding with respect to Old 2nd. Do we have specific safety SOPs with respect to plow drivers in this type of, because one would hope we would.
CEO Schmidt?
Through you, Mayor Colgan, to Council Alexander, yes, the township does has specific SOPs, but not specific to this hill and the maintenance requirements of this hill. So that will take time and to create. So again, you're looking at the Joint Health and Safety Committee along with staff undertaking those works, which is probably, I don't know, estimating probably 5 to 10 hour exercise. So staff time, multiple individuals doing that. And so we're going to spend time and effort doing that. And if we come back with a third party contractor that is at a quote that's reasonable, I'll leave it at that.
Councillor Moore and then Fisher.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Colvin, to C.O. Schmidt. From what I heard earlier today, it was the opinion that the third-party contractor would also be or require considerable oversight. So we would still be responsible in ensuring that they were acting as we would and following all those safety measures. So I think the third-party contractor also comes with the responsibility that was outlined. So I don't know that staff hours one way or the other is a consideration, because it is going to require staff time, and Manager Ha, I'm assuming, to pay attention to the third-party contractor, ensuring that they are following the same safety measures. I'm amenable either way. If we decide to go a third-party contractor route now, and we feel confident that staff are going to manage that closely because they're going to have to, that's fine. Or if we decide for this season to have staff manage that and revisit it in the spring, I'm fine with that too.
Thank you for that. And to echo Councillor Moore's concerns, I think that internally the diligence to determine the risks and the mitigation required, which then we would hold a third-party contractor accountable to. We have learned time and time again that we can't just pass off liability or diligence. So I think it's pertinent of us to understand, and if it is 10 hours or whatever it is, to fully understand what we are expecting a third-party contractor to do. I think that that's responsible of council. And I do have Councillor Fisher and then Deputy Cabral.
I was going to say, if we were to maybe move forward, I'm just thinking, if we were to move forward tonight with getting quotes and came back in a timely fashion and it was to our liking, great, we move ahead in that direction. If not at that time, could we then move ahead with staff? Maybe would that save staff time? Move it in that direction, and then before they spend any time doing that, knowing that they will have some oversight in the future, right? So would that be amenable?
I'm going to go to Deputy Cabral, and then I will have, for council's discretion, have Deputy Clerk Marshall read the recommendation one last time.
Thank you. I just get the sense from C.O. Schmidt, Mayor Coughlin, that they need some kind of a reply. My worry is that by not saying that our staff will be undertaking to do it and spending that 10 hours or whatever it is and then seeking quotes, is that when the quotes come in, we might not be happy with what we get. So I from my standpoint, I think this is something that we've been told is medium to low risk, that staff undertake to basically know that, hey, you guys are going to be doing this. However, we are also going to be looking at a third party, and if the quotes are reasonable, then we can remove it from staff's workload. But to say we're going to get quotes and then come back later on and then tell staff to do it because the quotes came in too high, I'd rather do it this way. If they need a response to say that that's the direction I would be wanting to see it go.
Thank you, and I do believe that's what's outlined in the resolution as it stands, so I will ask Deputy Clerk Marshall to read this one more time.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So the motion would read that council hereby directs staff to proceed with the winter maintenance on Old 2nd South beyond Sutton Heights using a 4x4 pickup truck as outlined in the consultant's report as follows. 1, remove the no maintenance sign if the road will be maintained even minimally each season. 2, remove the grader as an option for completing the work. 3, establish a means to alert residents to winter operations and to be alert for heavy equipment following a snowfall and when entering or leaving their homes. 4, complete service as a 2-person assignment with the following parameters: develop an SOP to protect the workers, establish a regularly scheduled time for winter service, notify residents by mail or email of the beginning of the winter operations season and to expect disruption for 1 hour, that operators of the 4x4 be well rested, a traffic control person be assigned with a 2-way communication to the operator advising of residential traffic approaching the crest of the hill, and install signage at the crest of the hill notifying that winter operations are in effect. And number 5, complete plowing in a downward direction only from the top of the hill when the road is closed off. And that council hereby directs staff to proceed with seeking quotes from independent third-party contractors to complete the work and report back, and that a written response be provided to the Joint Health and Safety Committee.
Council, are there any further comments or questions as been read? Anything further from staff? Council, all those in favor? Oh, I need a mover and seconder, Councillor Fisher, and seconder, Councillor Alexander. Council, all those in favor?
I'm asking for a recorded vote, please.
And a recorded vote on this, please.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Deputy Mayor Cabral has requested a recorded vote. Does anyone want the motion read again? Okay. Okay. Councillor Garwood.
No.
Councillor Alexander.
Yes.
Councillor Thompson.
No.
Councillor Moore.
Yes.
Councillor Fisher.
Yes.
Mayor Coughlin.
No,
And Deputy Mayor Cabral.
Yes.
and that has carried. At this time, council, we will move on to our second item, and I will look this direction to see if we could potentially, as there's no direction provided in closed, to defer this to a subsequent open session to allow for a break. But if council wants to have that discussion now, we can do so. We're good to talk about this at a later date. So at this time, I would need a motion to defer, or is that because it was dealt with in closed? Director Ainsworth.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. At this point, I would recommend council receive the confidential report. If there are no amendments, it would just be received for information.
That sounds lovely. Thank you. So that we have that the confidential report from the Director of Corporate Services clerk regarding proposals integrity commissioner services be received. And I will have that moved by Councillor Alexander, seconded by Deputy Cabral. Any further comment or question on that? All those in favor? And that has carried. And may I have a mover and seconder for the confirmation bylaw, please? I have Councillors Thompson and Moore that the bylaw 2024-082 to confirm and adopt the proceedings of council at the special meeting held on October 16th, 2024, listed herein be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? That has carried. And mover and seconder to adjourn the meeting, please. I have Deputy Cabral and Councillor Garwood that the special meeting the Township of Springwater does now adjourn at 6:05 p.m. to meet again in regular meeting on October 16, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? And that has carried. Thank you.